Terence White knows all about life on the front line. The boy from Gisborne was the longest-serving foreign correspondent in Kabul. During his time, he befriended a famous Mujahideen leader, survived the Afghan jihad, only to be seriously wounded by mortar shrapnel during factional fighting in Kabul. Well, he was expelled by the Taliban, but returned to Afghanistan to cover the post-9/11 invasion. And these, hot steel, are his memoirs. Terence White joins me now. Terence, good morning.
Good morning, Paul.
I'm sitting behind you on the plasma screen. We've got a picture of one of your survival stories. You were in that chopper when it hit the deck.
I was indeed, and I'm very, well, fortunate to be able to even explain this crash to you, because normally when these choppers come in, Paul, when they break up, they burst into flame. And this chopper, although it actually broke up and sent up a huge plume of black smoke, didn't burst into flame. And I guess the only reason I can explain this to you is that it was an overcrowded chopper. We had more than 40 of us.
As probably most of them in that area.
As they tend to be in Afghanistan, plus 5 turkeys. So when the chopper crashed, I was actually on the bottom of all these guys. And actually, first of all, my fear wasn't fire. I thought I was going to suffocate. I had such a load on my chest that I was pretty certain I was going to die from suffocation. Slowly the load lifted as all the other passengers sort of leapt out the hatch, and then I thought, my God, now it's going to be fire. There was no fire. So I followed a blood trail and leapt to the outside and took the photographs.
Would that were the worst incident that happened to you, but I suppose when you're credited with being the longest-serving foreign correspondent in Kabul, you're going to have a few nasty experiences. Why Kabul, though? Because you'd travelled extensively before you arrived in Afghanistan. What was it that won you over about that place?
Look, that's a good question, and one that's not easy to answer. Afghanistan is a place that's an experience. So you go there, it grips you or it doesn't. And perhaps it's one of those places that you either hate or love. For me, it was just an overwhelming experience, first because of the war. And I'll have to confess that in peacetime, I mean, not that pieces of...
Not that time was very long.
very, very short periods of time. Perhaps not so fascinating a country for me. But it was the war, and of course it was at the time of the Soviet occupation, we still had this sort of Cold War tension, so it was of great sort of historical significance. But beyond that, it was just the sheer adrenaline rush of actually being on the cutting edge, so to speak, walking that fine line between sort of life and death.
The Taliban threw you out.
Yes. And
then the Americans threw the Taliban out.
Yes.
You've been back since 9/11, since they were thrown out. And was that the right thing for the Americans to do?
Look, I'll tell you, I didn't actually... I was in the United States at the time when Bush said, OK, we'll hold those responsible for 9/11 who are giving sanctuary to the people we consider are to blame, which was bin Laden. So it was a foregone conclusion that there's going to be an invasion of Afghanistan. I didn't like it because I knew a lot of Afghans would be killed, which they were. Having said that, it did overthrow the Taliban regime, and I was actually glad of that.
It would be fair to say, wouldn't it, that it is a much better, and even although it's still dangerous, a much safer place now than it was during their regime?
Moot point, Paul. There'd be some who'd say no, and given the fact that there is what I refer to as a resurgent insurgency in Afghanistan. Now, the Taliban weren't defeated. They were toppled. Everybody knew that, and I'm not sure what the Americans' agenda really was, because Kabul wasn't occupied by foreign troops. It was occupied by Massoud's so-called Northern Alliance troops, but they were actually blocked. The Americans prevented them from going straight in. A lot of al-Qaeda types escaped. And from other cities as well, al-Qaeda types were allowed, I say types because it's a very loose definition, but foreign fighters were allowed to escape. Anyway, the Taliban leader as well as bin Laden are both still alive today, and there is now very, very intense fighting in the south and
there's
southeast.
still some Taliban strongholds.
Yes, there are.
It's obvious reading Hot Steel that Kabul was right under your skin, that Afghanistan was right under your skin. Is it still there? I mean, you've got children now. You're leading the life of a family man, but I mean, do you still wake up some mornings and think, I wish I was waking up in Kabul?
I do. With the only proviso in that is that Kabul, when I was there, was my own patch. There were 3 or 4 foreigners, basically. Yep. Now it's crowded with foreigners, and frankly, you know, I don't really like that. So I don't miss being there in the sense because look, put it this way, I don't like to share it with other people. But yes, it was a passion. The family, I've sort of sometimes said, has been a catharsis. It's been a way that I'm trying to wean myself off.
Yeah.
my wife is not here, and she may or may not see this program.
She's a journalist, she understands.
Yes, well, I hope so. It hasn't been a successful transformation, but family, I'll have to say, I've always said this. The greatest sort of revolution in my life is becoming a dad. Came very late in life for me, but overwhelming experience. I recommend it.
Terence, it's a brilliant book. It's a brilliant read.
Have you read it?
And I've not finished it yet.
Good man.
Because I didn't get it just recently. But it's not finished yet, but you explain in here in detail. I saw some of the photos just now of Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, 1995, the moment that very nearly ended your life.
Absolutely.
They're incredible photographs and it's incredible stories, so people will need to get the book to read all about that. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much,
Thanks
Paul.
Terence White.